Wish TV. All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
I'm Garrett Bergquist, government reporter for Wish TV and WRTV, and the producer of All Indiana Politics. Delegates to the Indiana Republican Party convention on June 20th will have 4 choices for Secretary of State. Current Secretary of State Diego Morales, Max Engling, David Shelton, and Jamie Rittenauer. Engling is a latecomer to the race. He jumped in late May as accusations of misconduct continued to mount against Morales. Engling is a former staffer for Senator Jim Banks. He also ran unsuccessfully in the 2024 primary for Congressional District 5. I sat down with him to talk about his vision for the office.
Your day moves fast. Your news should too. That's why there's a new and improved Wish TV app, bringing you more local news, breaking alerts, live streaming, weather forecast, radar, and Indiana sports, all in one place. Customize your news feed to see the stories that matter most to you and get the information you need when you need it. Download the new and improved Wish TV app today on iOS or Android and take News 8 with you everywhere. Central Indiana. Wish TV is now live on YouTube TV and Hulu Live, offering more hours of local programming than any other station. Search for Wish TV or look for CW8 on both YouTube TV and Hulu Live to find us. Watch local news, sports, and lifestyle shows live from Wish TV. You can still catch Wish TV free over the air or stream it live on wishtv.com and on the free Wish TV mobile apps. Wish TV, available in more places for the latest news, weather, and sports.
And joining us now is Max Engling, one of the 4 Republican candidates for Secretary of State. Max, thank you for coming in today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Garrett. It's great to be here.
Why are you running for Secretary of State?
So I love the state of Indiana. We've got 4 kids. I'm married, and I want to make sure that what we've built here remains and that we keep our elections secure and that we move forward in a positive direction.
You came into this race very suddenly. How did that come about?
There was an undercurrent of delegates that came to me directly and said, we don't like where we're headed. We want to make sure that we have someone that we can vote for. It gives us confidence, not only in the office, but also in the ability to win in the fall. And so that kept happening. And then as that rose to the top, there was support from folks higher up as well. And they said, let's run together. Let's make sure that we have someone that can win in the fall and take this coalition that's been built between the grassroots and the party leadership to say, let's move forward and win in the fall against who we now know as a candidate on the Democratic side.
You've called for U.S. citizen-only voting. A federal law has already prohibited non-citizens from voting for a long time, and we already have a photo ID law in Indiana, so what would you do differently?
Absolutely, but some folks in this race have said that it's not a very big issue. It doesn't happen a whole lot. Now, I'll give credit to the Secretary of State here where they found 160 some folks that had registered to vote illegally. But what we need to do is be much better proactively about limiting the folks that can be registered to vote illegally. We don't want that at all. It's okay to come on the backside and say we're going to prosecute folks that have voted illegally, but we need to be better proactively to solve for that. And part of it is around when someone gets their license, if they don't register to vote, and then later they apply to register to vote, and they attest that, yes, I can legally do this. It's illegal to do that, but they have found folks that will go in and after the fact register to vote, and we have to do something more to make sure that's not going to happen. For instance, if you look at your license, you could put a note on there that says, this person is here legally, but not a citizen. And if you do that, that'll help the folks that are working the polls to make sure that this person is not voting.
Why do you want to switch to a closed primary?
I don't think it's asking too much for Republicans to vote in Republican primaries and Democrats to vote in Democratic primaries so that they can select the best candidate for their district and then put that person forward in the general election to determine who's the best person to win in this district. There's a lot of states that do this, including states like the state of Florida that have very successfully implemented this. It hasn't driven down voter turnout. In fact, it gives people more confidence that the candidate that they prefer is going to win in their primaries and face off in the general election.
Should Indiana require hand-marked paper ballots for all elections?
The most important thing there to me is that we do have a paper audit trail. So right now there's the machines, if you look at a VVPAT machine, You make your markers on the screen, but then before you're done, there's a paper tape that runs next to it that says, this is who you voted for, and you confirm that yourself, and then that paper tape is recorded. So I think it's extremely important that we have a paper auditable record of your vote, each and every vote, to make sure if there is ever an issue, or if you need to go in and do an actual recount, that you have that auditable trail.
You said you would crack down on shell companies as Secretary of State. How would you go about doing that, and how big of a problem do you believe it is right now?
It's very important. So I think a lot of folks have seen around the state where these shell trucking companies have created identical LLCs in one case there were 14 in one home address. And what they do is they rack up all these violations from drivers. They're pulling too heavy of a load, they're driving too long, or other issues, challenges with their CDL. And then instead of dealing with that and paying the repercussions of having drivers that shouldn't be on in this LLC, they instead discard that LLC, create a new shell company, move those drivers back over, and continue to put dangerous drivers on the road with Hoosiers. Now, the federal issues can't be solved by the Secretary of State. However, the Secretary of State has to do their job in the Business Registration Office of seeing that incoming data, compile that data, and then make sure that if there are anomalies, like 14 identical LLCs in one home address, that you package that and hand it to either the AG or local entities to further investigate.
Don't let high golf rates drive you out of bounds. Save big with the Wish TV Great Golf Club card.
Central Indiana's largest golf club card membership is back for the 8th season with more courses than ever before. Save over 75% on tee times at 27 Central Indiana golf courses. All you need is the Wish TV Great Golf Club card. Cards are valid for the entire 2026 golf season.
Great courses, great savings. Score your Great Golf Club card today.
How would you approach business licensing?
So one, the state of Indiana has to be a very straightforward state for registering a small business. You want to make sure that we're open to entrepreneurs starting a business. I've filed a small business myself with the Secretary of State's office and hiring Hoosiers. And I believe right now we do have a straightforward process. However, it also needs to be less burdensome as you move forward into the process. So if you're submitting information back for your BOI, or you're submitting more information as you continue to update your registration, you already submit so much of that information to the state of Indiana. You shouldn't be redundantly doing that with the Secretary of State's office. Instead, certify, yes, this information is still correct, or certify the information I've already submitted to the state of Indiana is true in this instance also, and take the onerous part of government out of your life. Anything we can do to create more efficiency and pull the government out of your life is where we want to be as a Secretary of State's office.
Current Secretary of State Diego Morales has attracted controversy due to his overseas travel, hiring family members, several other issues within that office. How would you restore trust within that office?
It's very important to set the vision and the leadership from the top to say, we are going to lead with these conservative values, and know that you're going to put a staff in place around you that understands that vision, that runs the divisions very well, but also understands the role of the Secretary of State. And so from the top, you have to instill that confidence. And I've worked in many areas across my career where we've had to do that in the past. And the person with their name on the door sets the tone for the office. That's my responsibility to say, we're going to set a vision that includes what we're supposed to do in the office and the roles of the Secretary of State, and not a lot of the things that we've seen happening in the current Secretary of State's office.
Bo Bai won the Democratic nomination. He has significant name recognition and a very strong donor network. Now, when you ran for Congress 2 years ago in the District 5 primary, you finished with less than 10% of the vote. Does that concern you at all?
So I'm very focused right now on the convention that's happening in June 20th. That is the primary goal. I'm talking with each and every delegate. We're meeting in person, we're traveling the state, and that's my primary responsibility. However, I will make two things that I'd like to point out. One is that the Democratic candidate wants to run a playbook that is against the current Secretary of State. They've built that out. I am running a separate race, and I want to make sure that we don't give them that opportunity, that we run a separate race that they're not prepared for. And secondly, I do think it's telling that they have nominated their Democratic candidate at the same time as we've seen what's happening in Los Angeles with a very long, delayed election. And we won't let that happen in the state of Indiana. Hoosiers are smart. They do not want what they've seen with Los Angeles, with California, with Illinois, where elections are not run well and they're not run timely.
What do you say to delegates who feel like you might be getting foisted on them at the last minute?
So we talked about this a little bit already, where it wasn't folks from leadership coming to me and say, hey, we have to have you. It was the delegates at the grassroots level saying, we need another option. We have to win in the fall. We're not willing to let our elections and the Secretary of State's office fall to the left. And so with that undergirding, with those folks that came to me, then folks at the top have said very clearly that once the last piece happened with the Secretary of State and his Chief of Staff, that they said, we have to do something else. We need to win in the fall. And we're asking Max, with that grassroots, the grassroots support that has already been built, to go run, put our best foot forward so that we could win in the fall.
What makes you the best choice at the Republican convention on the 20th?
So I have a varied background. I have worked in the private sector. I've worked for several small businesses here in Indiana. I filed my own small business, like I mentioned. I also have a public sector background. I worked for the Chief Elections Committee in the U.S. House, and I also worked for U.S. Senator Jim Banks. And taking all of that, including 3 years that I've been on the road talking to Hoosiers to say what's going well, where do we need to do things differently, and how do we take government out of your lives? You take all of that, including a legislative background that can help get these priorities across the finish line at the State House, which is a huge part of this. And I believe that not only am I the most well-rounded, but I've built the coalition and have the support of a coalition to say, let's actually go win in the fall. And some of the priorities that I'm running on, like you mentioned, closing the primaries, having only citizens voting in our elections, and stopping the business fraud that we've seen around these shell trucking companies. 2 of those things come from the State House. You have to get that authorization, that authority from the State House, but you need a champion in the Secretary of State's office that has done this before at the legislative level and can work to get those things through the State House partners.
Max Engling, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Garrett.
That was Max Engling. He is one of 4 candidates vying for the Republican nomination for Secretary of State at the Indiana Republican Party Convention. That will be held in Fort Wayne on June 20th. Remember, you can catch All Indiana Politics every Sunday at 9:30 in the morning on Wish TV and at 11:30 in the evening on WRTV. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Thanks for listening.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.